This is AstroTurf. This bill will preserve and protect the programs, the social safety net, but it will make it much more common sense. Look, 1 out of every $5 or $6 in Medicaid is improper. We have illegal immigrants on the program. We have able-bodied working adults that don't have a work requirement that they would have in TANF or even SNAP. And those are something that's very important to institute. That's what this bill does. No one will lose coverage as a result of this bill.
That's not what Josh Hawley, who is not exactly a liberal Democrat, said. He said it's wrong to cut health care for the working poor, and that's what we're talking about here with Medicaid.
Well, we continue to work with people in the Senate as to working them through with the specifics of the bill, what it does and what it doesn't do. We'll continue to do that, and I think at the end of the day, the Senate will have a resounding vote in favor of a substantially similar bill.
Russ Vought, one of the architects of Project 2025 that Donald Trump claimed to have never heard of, is now somehow on TV pushing the same lies about no one being kicked off of Medicaid so that oligarchs and corporations can take more of your money.
We're not doing any cutting of anything meaningful. The only thing we're cutting is waste, fraud, and abuse. With Medicaid, waste, fraud, and abuse. There's tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. There's incompetent things put in. We have illegal aliens that are multiple killers with multiple murder records getting Medicaid. I don't think anybody minds if we cut that. The Democrats, on the other hand, are going to destroy it because they're going to leave these people on. We're cutting 3 things: waste, fraud, and abuse. We're not changing Medicaid, and we're not changing Medicare, and we're not changing Social Security.
Ever wonder why one of the architects of Project 2025 is pushing the same debunked talking point that Donald Trump is pushing? If they're willing to lie about their preconceived plans to dismantle federal agencies and their independence from the executive branch, which has obviously happened with the introduction of Musk and Doge and their attacks on those very agencies, why should anyone believe their lies on their plans of kicking Americans off of Medicaid?
80% of my time is working on the plans of what's necessary to take control of these bureaucracies. And we are working doggedly on that, whether it's destroying their agency's notion of independence. They're independent from the president.
They don't think people have the capacity to pay attention to their actions and see that they're constantly lying with the same basic lie.
They say many will lose coverage because of paperwork, red tape, or failing and falling short of the new rules. So just let me ask you directly, do you have any actual proof that these people are engaging in fraud? Millions of Americans, as you say.
This is a very important distinction. Those 4.8 million people will not lose their Medicaid unless they choose to do so. I will go into any town hall in any district in America and explain what this is, and every single person will nod their heads and go, oh, that makes sense. You're telling me that you're going to require the able-bodied, these young men, for example, okay, to only work or volunteer in their community for 20 hours a week, and that's too cumbersome for them? I'm not buying it. The American people are not buying it.
Trump's lapdog Mike Johnson told that same lie last week on Sunday shows.
When you're talking about work requirements, by the way, it's very flexible. It just means that you either work or you volunteer, do something meaningful in your community, or you're in a job or work training program. 20 hours a week. I mean, this is not some huge demand. If you're going to be on the public wagon, you have to do something to help pull it if you're able. And again, Jake, the purpose of this is to preserve these very necessary, very important safety net programs for the people who actually need and deserve them, and not those who are gaming the system. And I think I'll go into any town hall anywhere in America, my district or otherwise, and explain this, and everyone nods in agreement and understands it.
So we see how their propaganda works? But it'd be annoying for me to come back here a week later and remind y'all again that Mike Johnson hasn't done a town hall in damn near 2 years. So he's just making it up that he can go to any town hall in the country, spew these lies, and everyone will be nodding their heads in agreement. Actually, in fact, yet again, this guy told his fellow Republicans to stop holding town halls as they've been getting their asses handed to them by angry constituents that demand their representatives do something about this administration's extreme power grabs and destruction of their lives. Actually, in fact, he called people paid agitators because he hates them. So he'd rather most people just hear his blatant dishonesty so much that they assume that it's true.
Just to be clear, I mean, this is not a Democratic talking point. I'm asking about something that President Trump himself had floated the idea of. It is estimated that if the bill becomes law, the top 10% of households would see an increase in resources, but the bottom 10% would see a decrease in resources. Why are you comfortable with that?
No, that's simply not. I'm not comfortable with that. It is not true. look at the actual facts of the tax cuts that we're extending, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, again, from 2017, the people that benefited most from that were the lowest income Americans. It was households that made between $20,000 and $30,000 a year annually. They had the biggest benefit from the TCJA. Also, the people that make $40,000 or less had their best tax benefits in over 40 years. Yeah. Go back and look at the statistics. So what we're doing right now is, by making all those tax cuts permanent, we're preventing the largest tax increase in U.S. history. Kristen, if we don't get this bill passed, every American is going to receive the largest tax increase in the history of our country at the end of this year when the TCJA expires. Don't forget that.
What Johnson and company don't expect anyone to notice is that Trump's 2017 tax cut bill is a policy that has continued to exist and benefit the richest ever since. Just because they gave the lowest incomes a couple $100s of a tax break in 2017, they don't think anyone will follow up with the rest of it. Because according to the Tax Policy Center, households with incomes in the top 1% will receive an average tax cut of more than $60,000 in 2025, compared to an average tax cut of less than $500 for households in the bottom 60%. As a share of after-tax income, tax cuts at the top, for both households in the top 1% and the top 5%, are more than triple the total value of the tax cuts received for people with incomes in the bottom 60%. The Congressional Budget Office estimated in 2018 that the 2017 law would cost $1.9 trillion over 10 years. And recent estimates show that making the law's temporary individual income and estate tax cuts permanent would cost another roughly $400 billion a year, beginning in 2027, 2 years from now. See, these things don't start and stop the first year that they make these laws. They give middle class and lower income Americans tax breaks of a couple $100 to a few $1,000s in the first year to convince them that they're benefiting. But as the law from 8 years ago is set to expire, it's been rapidly tilted to the interests of the richest and corporations. So it's their number one priority to extend them and make them even worse, while raiding programs like Social Security and healthcare that regular Americans depend on to pay for not even all of it, but just a part of it. So when Mike Johnson tells viewers to take a look at the 2017 bill and its benefits, he doesn't expect many people to do it to the extent of seeing its effects beyond the first year. So the Americans he's concerned with receiving the biggest tax hike, if these things aren't extended as he said, are the rich people that paid millions of dollars to have a front row seat at Trump's inauguration that we all saw. The only thing these guys are worried about is getting people on board with their targeting of social programs and the empty idea of tax breaks long enough to add to the debt and deficit multiple years into the future, when they can then blame it on whoever beats them in these elections. I mean, it worked before.
The last 4 years, we've been held hostage under the Democratic rule. That is horrible, horrible, horrible. We've had more taxes. We paid more for everything.
Wait, you think that taxes? You think that taxes have been like really high in the last 4 years, right?
It's not just that. We paid for everything. We, the middle income America, was paying for the Democratic, all this.
I just want to clarify, you didn't like Biden and Harris's tax code.
I did not.
Would you ever vote for it again?
No.
Under any circumstances?
No.
It was Trump's tax code.
No, it was Obama's. It was Obama's.
In 2017, Donald Trump passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in which was his tax code and set to expire this year, meaning under the entire Biden-Harris administration, we were under Donald Trump's tax code. You just told us that you hated that tax code and you never vote for it again under any circumstances.
I would never vote for a Democratic regime ever.
So until the next time they need to blame someone else for the pillaging of the country's resources, and now our healthcare and social safety net programs, some veterans programs, food assistance programs, educational programs, and on, they're hoping Mike Johnson's sleazy voice will help hide the lies that his self-proclaimed Lord and Savior would probably never approve of.
Mr. Speaker, if the big, beautiful bill does add to the debt, will President Trump own that?
It's not going to add to the debt.
Mr. Speaker, the Joint Committee on Taxation, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, the Tax Foundation, the Penn-Wharton budget model all say this will add trillions of dollars to the deficit. Are you really telling the American people this will not add one penny to the debt and deficit? You can guarantee that?
I am telling you this is going to reduce the deficit